limited progress has shifted towards the sustainable and balanced development. Natural resources are the limited and must be used to judicially. Environmental protection must be integrated and development of planning. What is the environment impact on environment? Human activities primarily driven by the industrialization, population growth, and overconsumption have the cause to a severe long-term degradation to the natural environment. But what is the key impacts, including the climate change from the greenhouse gases emissions, biodiversity loss, habitat destruction, and widespread the population of air, water, soil? These actions trigger the ecological crisis such as deforestation, ocean acidification, and resource depletion, threatening to the global ecosystem and human survival. But what is the key areas of environmental impact assessment? The climate change, burning of fossil fuels, for example, burning of fossil fuels, industrial activity releasing the greenhouse gases, causing the global temperature to the risk. What is the environmental impact on pollution? The contamination of air, water, soil from waste chemicals and industrial emissions impact to the human health and ecosystem. Deforestation and human habitat loss. The clearance of forest of agriculture and urbanizations remove the carbon sink and destroy the wildlife habitats. Some impacts on loss of biodiversity, fishing, hunting, and destruction of the some natural and environmental are driving to the special extinction of alarmic rates. Resource depletion. What is the resource depletion? Excessive extraction of the natural resources, including the water and minerals, access to the earth ability to regenerate. These changes often described as entrepreneurial activities that create the significant risk, including to soil erosion, reduce the air quality, and loss of essential ecosystem services. What is the environmental impact assessment? Environmental impact assessment is a systematic process used to identify, predict, the evaluate, and mitigate the environment and social impact of a proposed project before they are carried out the project. It is the main purpose to ensure the development and discussion are environmental sound and sustainable. Its main purpose, what is the main purpose of environmental impact assessment? Ensure the development discussions are environmentally soundly and sustainable. Environmental impact assessment is a process of evaluating the environmental impact of proposed project or development, taking into the account interrelated socio-economic, culture, and human health impacts, both beneficial and adverse. Newton National Environmental Program defines environmental impact assessment as a tool to identify the environmental, social, and economical impact of the project prior to the decision making. It's aimed to predict the environmental impact on project. The prior to the decision making process, it aims to predict the environmental impact and at an early stage in project planning and designing. Find the ways to, it means reduce the adverse impacts on shape and project, suit the local environment, and present the prediction to the option to the discussion making. Environmental impact assessment is an Indian statutory backed of the Environmental Protection Act 1986, which contains the various provisions on environmental impact assessment methodology and process. What is the history behind the environmental impact assessment in India? The Indian experience with the environmental impact assessment began over 20 years back. It started in 1976, 77, when the Planning Commission asked the Department of Science and Technology to examine the River Valley project from the environmental angle. Till 1994, environmental clearance from the central government was administrative discussion and lacked the legislative support. On 27th January 1994, the Union Ministry of Environmental and Forest, under the Protection of Environmental Protection Act 1986, EA notification made to environmental clearance mandatory for the exploration of modernization of any activity for the setting of new projects. Listed the schedule 1 for the notification. The Ministry of Environmental, Forest and Climate Change notified a new EIA legislations to September 2006. The notification makes a mandatory for the various projects such as mining, thermal power plants, river valley, infrastructure, projects like roads, highways, ports, harbors, and airport projects. And industry also include a very small prolonging the founded unit to get the environmental clearance. What is a typically project required the environmental impact assessment, like dams and irrigation projects, highways and railways, mining operations, power plants, industrial complexes, urban development projects. They are need to the environmental. I will share you slides here. Share the slide. This what is the main objectives of environmental impact assessment? First, you understand the environmental impact assessment. Learn the purpose. You first recognize how to develop the activities effect of nature and human environment. Predict the environmental impacts. Identify the potential positive and negative impacts of projects. Assess the impacts on air quality, water quality, resources, soil and land uses, biodiversity, climate change. Assess the socio-economic impact of evaluate the uh, local communities, livelihood of the employment, health, safety, cultural heritage, uh, knowledge. What is the legal framework? Understand the environmental laws, policies, produce the government of EIA. Ensure the project complete with the regulation before the approval. What is the environmental EIA process? The EIA involves in the step mentioned below the how mentioned below. I will give some slides here. EIA process is clinical with interaction between the various steps: screening, scoping, baseline data, impact prediction, mitigation, public hearing, decision making, monitoring the implementation of environment management plans. This is the main steps of the environmental impact assessment. The screening. What is the screening? The project plan is screened for the scale of investment, locations and types, development of if projects need to statutory clearance. This is a screening process. A scoping. What is the scoping of EIA? The project potential impacts and zone of impacts, mitigation possibilities, and need for the monitoring. Collection of baseline. How to collection of baseline data for the project? Baseline data is the environmental status of study area. It's including the air, water quality, air quality. The impact prediction. What is the impact prediction of EIA? The positive and negative, reversible and irreversible and temporary and permanent impacts need to be predicted with purpose of the good understanding the project by assessment agency. What is the mitigation measures and EIA reports? EIA reports should including the action to steps for the preventing the minimizing or by passing the impacts or else the levels of compensation for the probable environmental damage and loss. Public hearing the main process to the environmental impact assessment process. Public hearing and completion of the EIA report. The public and environmental group leaving to the closed project sites may be informed to the consulted. Decision impact assessment authority, along with the experts, consult the project in charge along with the consultant to take the final decision. Keep mind the EIA, environmental management plan. These are steps of environmental impact assessment. What is the silent features of the EIA amendment? Yeah, environmental impact assessment notification in 2006 has decentralized the environmental impact clearance projects, categorized in the development projects. There are two categories: category 1 and category 2. Category A or category. Category A is a national level appraisal, and category B is a state level appraisal. The category A projects are appraised the national level impact assessment in the expert appraisal committee, as a category B project is a state environmental impact assessment authority. After 2006 amendment, the EIA cycle is comprised for the four stages: screening, scoping, public hearing, appraisal. The category A projects require the mandatory environmental clearance, and thus they do not undergo in the screening process. Category B projects undergo the screening process, and they are the classified into the two types. Category B one projects mandatory for the require the EIA. Category B2 projects are not required to the environmental impact assessment process. These category 1 projects and category 2 projects undergoing the complete EIA process, where the category B2 projects are included from the exclude from the completion of EIA process. Importance of EIA. EIA links environment with the development for the environmentally safe and sustainable development. EIA provides a cost-effective method to the eliminate or minimize the adverse effect of development projects. EIA enables the decision making to the analyze the effects of development acts on the environmental well before the development project is implemented. EIA encourages the adaptation of mitigation strategies in the development plans. EIA makes sure that the development plan is environmentally sound and within the limits of the capacity capacity for assimilation and regeneration of the ecosystem. EIA, what is the how to come the EIA process applicability? There are several projects with significant of environmental impact that are exempted from the notification, either because they are not listed in the schedule 1, or the investment are less than what is the provide the notification. What is the compensation experts committee and standards? Composition of the expert committee and that standards. It has been founded the team formed the conducting EIA studies. It is lacking of expertise. The various fields such as environmentalist and wildlife experts, anthropologists and social activities. What is the public hearing? Public hearing, the public comments are not considered at the early stage, which often leads to conflict at the later stage of the project clearance. The number of projects with the significant environmental and social impact have been included from the mandatory public hearing process. That data collectors do not play the respect to the indigenous knowledge of the local people. Quality of yield. What is the quality of EIA? One of the biggest concerns with the environmental clearance process is related to the quality of EIA reports that are being carried out. Some lack of credibility. There are some many cases fraudulently EIA studies. There are erroneous errors. Data has been used to same facts used to two are totally different places. Often the more for the strategic industries such as nuclear energy projects, EMP projects, they are kept in the confidential for the political and administration reasons. The details regarding the effectiveness and implementation of the mitigation methods are often they not provided. The emergency plans are not discussed in the sufficient details, and information not disseminated the communities. What's the types of environmental impact assessment? The type of impact assessment uh, related to the directly occurring the same and time and place actively the three removal of the uh, pollution impact, uh, but coming up the temporary impact, multiple projects, several factories degrading the air quality, construction of the long-term listening, groundwater depletion. They are the impacts of some environmental issues. What is the key related concept to the environmental impact assessment? Sustainable development. Sustainable development that meets the present needs without compromising the future generations. Environmental management plan. What is the environmental management plan? It plans to outlining the mitigation and monitoring the management measures. What is the risk assessment of environmental impact assessment? Evaluate the probability and consequences of environmental hazards. The cost benefit analysis compared to the economical benefits with the environmental and social costs. Legal framework. What is the legal framework of environmental impact assessment before that? Environmental impact assessment 1986 Environmental Protection Act. EIA notification come from the amendment 2006 EIA notification. Share something. Development environment. The development environmental refers to the conflict between economic growth and the protection of natural resources and ecosystem. Rapid development often the improves living standards, but if not managed properly, it is caused a serious environmental degradation. Or industrialization and urbanization. Industrialization involves the growth of factories, industries, and manufacturing. Urbanization of the expansion of cities as a people moved from the rural area to the urban areas for the job and better services. What is the positive impacts of industrialization and urbanization? Job creation, improve the infrastructure growth, improve the infrastructure technology, better access to the education and health care. What is the negative environmental impact impacts on these urbanization and industrialization? Air and water pollution from the factories increase the waste generation to the urbanization. The loss of green spaces and wetlands hit the islands, affect the in cities. For example, rapid urban growth can lead to the deforestation for the housing and industries, increasing the pollution and reducing the biodiversity. So, in this case, urbanization is some positive side and some negative side. Uh, uh, Resource depletion. Development environment में resource development depletion. Resource depletion occurs when the natural resources are used to faster than they can be replenished. The major uh, resources are displaced fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gases, forest, fresh water, minerals, some marine life. What is how to cause this mm, over mineralization impacts of industrialization and urbanization, overpopulation, excessive of consumption, unsuitable agriculture and mining, industrial expansion. What is the consequences of these? Energy crisis, water scarcity, soil degradation, food insecurity. So these are causes to environmental impact. Uh, Pollution and biodiversity loss. Development activities often the generation of pollution and generate the pollution and it leads to loss of biodiversity. This type of pollution, what is the type of pollution is causes to the development activities? Air pollution, industrial emissions. Some you put the industries, it causes to the air pollution. Water pollution, soil pollution, noise pollution. Noise pollution come from the traffic and construction areas. Soil pollution come from the chemical and solid waste areas. Water pollution projects. What is the biodiversity loss causes? Habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, overexploitation of species, invasive of loss of species, impact on biodiversity loss, ecosystem. What is the impact on biodiversity loss? It causes to ecosystem imbalance, reduce the food and medicinal resources, loss of ecological services like water purification, pollination, pollution. The balancing development and environment. What is a balancing development? And it reduces the conflicts. Society aim to the sustainable development key strategies, renewable energy adaptation, green infrastructure. You maintain the balance between the development and environment. You should be need to develop these sustainable developments, green infrastructure, waste reduction and recycle process, conservation of forest and wildlife, strict environmental regulation, implement the environmental impact assessment project. What is the are the environment development and environment? The next one is this. What is the major environmental impacts? The development activities often create serious environmental consequence if we not manage to sustainably. Four major impact areas on industrialization, industrial pollution, mining degradation, large dams, and energy uses are leading to the deforestation. The first one is industrialization. Industrial pollution. Industrialization release the pollutants into the air, water, soil. What is the source of industry pollution? The main source of industry pollution: chemical industries, thermal plants, textile industries, cement industries, the steel industries, oil refinery industries. These are the major source of industrial pollution. What is the major impacts on industrial pollution? The air pollution causes the air pollution. For example, SO2, NOx, particulate matter. Uh, so for example, oil refinery industries release the SO2 to the air. It causes the environmental air pollution. Water contamination from the effluents, soil pollution due to the hazardous waste, health problems like respiratory diseases. For example, industrial discharge into the rivers reduce the water quality and affects the aquatic life. Mining degradation. Mining experts and minerals mining extract the minerals and fossil fuels, but causes the severe land and ecosystem damage. What is the impacts on mining? Environmentally damage to the uh, some impacts. Deforestation for the mining sites, social erosion and land degradation, water pollution from the acid mines and drainages, dust and noise pollution, displacement of local communities. What is the long-term effect of the mining pollution? Loss of fertility of land, contaminate groundwater, reduce the biodiversity. In case large you are building a large dam like hydropower, irrigation, food control, but they have a major environmental and social impacts. What is the environmental and social impacts of the large dams? The submerge of the forest and farmlands, loss of wildlife habitat, changes the river flow and sediment uh, patterns, waterlogging and sanitation, impacts on waterlogging and salination. What is the social impacts? Displacement of these local communities and loss of traditional livelihood, culture and heritage site destruction. These are the impact of the mining sites. What is the energy uses and deforestation? What is the damage, environmental impact damage to the energy use and environmental impacts? I will share you something. Energy and major difference. Urbanization impacts. Urbanization is the rapid growth of cities uh, due to the migration from the rural areas and natural population increase while it is bring to the economic opportunities and better infrastructure. It is also create the significant environment and social changes. First one, pressure on housing and rapid urban growth often exceeds the capacity of cities provide the adequate uh, adequate housing and basic services. Impact on housing, rise of some slums and informal settlement, overcrowded living the conditions, a lack of sanitation and drainage, increase the cost of housing, impact on the water supply, overuse of groundwater, shortage, drinking peak demand depends on the tanker water, some contamination of drinking water resources, a poor living standards and spread to the waterborne diseases and like this. Urban areas generate the large amount of solid waste and sewage waste. It causes to air pollutants and it generates the waste pollution. A major source of uh, waste is uh, generated to the waste and sewage waste. Industrial discharges, some vehicle emissions, construction debris. This also create the waste pollutants. What are the types of pollution? Air pollution from the traffic industries, water pollution from the untreated sewage, soil pollution from the dumping waste, noise pollution from the traffic construction. What is the consequence of these household housing and housing and water and urbanization impacts? Respiratory diseases, contaminated water bodies, urban flooding due to the clogged drains, degrade the quality of life. These are all the create urbanization impact to the waste and pollution. What is the social stress and crime? Urbanization can lead to the social and psychological pressure on, especially when the growth unplanned. What is the causes of social stress and crime? Underemployment, income inequity, overcrowding, the lack of social support to the system. What are the major impacts on the social stress and crime? Increase the stress and mental health issues, rises the crime rates, sustain the abuse of social conflict to the unrest. This is the urbanization impacts. Green revolution effect. The green revolution refers to uh, the green revolution refers to the high yield crops introducing the high crops varieties, modern irrigation, chemical fertilizers, and pesticide, increasing the agriculture production, especially during the 1960s and 80s. While it is a significantly improved the food production, it is also creating the several environmental and social impact to the social changes. What is a high yield seeds? High yield variety seeds, crops such as the wheat, rice, where the develop the produce a more grain for the interior. What is the positive impacts on the high yield varieties? Increase of food production, reducing the risk of famine, improve the farmer income and some regions, enhance to the national food security. Security. What is the limitation of the high yield variety? Requirement of large amount of water depends on the chemical inputs of ever to the large farmers over over small farmers. Next one is heavy use of fertilizer and pesticide. High yield variety crops needed to high dose of chemical fertilizer, something pesticides, achievement the maximum productivity. Impact. What is the impact of the high use of fertilizer and high yield varieties? Increase the crop yield from the short term, reduce the crop losses from the pest and diseases. What is the environmental concern to the high yield varieties? The accumulation of toxins, soil contamination, groundwater harms, benefits the. What is the green revolution impacts on environmental concern? Accumulation of toxic chemicals in the soil, contamination, groundwater harms to beneficial insect of the wildlife, development to the resident to the pests, silent water pollution. Sorry. The green revolution solved the major food shortages, but they create the environmental sustainable and issues. The modern agriculture is shifting towards organic farming, integrated pest management, sustainable irrigation, soil conservation practices. Some social linkages of environmental changes. The environmental degradation and large development projects often they have a direct social consequences. These effects are closely linked to the well-being, economy, and health communities. The uh, displacement occurs when the people are forced to leave their homes due to the development projects or environmental degradation. The common cause of what is the common cause of the social linkage environmental change? The construction of large dams, mining projects, industrial zones, urban exploitation. What are the natural disasters? One natural disaster. The impact on the social linkage and environment is a loss of homes, homelands, breakdown of the community networks, the cultural and social disruption, psychological stress. These are the social linkage between the environment. Uh, what is the livelihood loss? How to livelihood loss? Environmental damage or displacement often the result the loss of traditional livelihoods. For example, farmer losing the land due to the industrial projects, forest depends it is losing the access of resources, workers losing the job due to the environmental disasters. What is the consequence of these environmental social linkages? Reduce the income, insecurity, increase the development. What is the poverty and mitigation between the social linkage? Loss of livelihood often the push to the people into poverty, forcing them to the migrated to city in search of work. What is the key effects of these social linkage? The growth of urban slums, overcrowded living conditions, unemployment of loss of paying jobs, increasing the social inequity. What is the facing how the people are facing the some health problems? Environmental degradation directly affects the human health. What is the major cause of these environmental degradation difficulties in human health? Air pollution from the industries and vehicles, the contaminated water contaminate some pollutants coming from the water bodies and contaminate the water sources. The poor sanitation is overcrowded areas. It is also impact on human life and health aspect. Chemicals impacts and respiratory diseases like waterborne diseases like cholera, typhoid, vector-borne diseases like dengue, malaria, skin disorders, they are facing the malnutrition and weakened immunity. What is the environmental impact assessment? Environmental impact assessment is structured process used to identify, predict, and evaluate the environment and social impacts of the optional to environmentally soundly and socially acceptable. The core concept of environmental impact assessment is systematic impact prediction. I will share you something. Systematically impact prediction. EIA follows a structured scientific process to the predict how project will affect the environment. The key features of systematic impact of prediction uses the data collection and environmental studies or predict the impact on air, water, soil, biodiversity, and communities. Consider the both short-term and long-term effects of the environmental impact assessment. Evaluate the direct and indirect cumulative impacts. What is the purpose of these environmental impact systematic impact prediction? Anticipate the problems before they are occurring. The plan of mitigation measures reduce the environmental damage. The second one, indisciplinary approach. The environmental involves the experts from the multiple fields to access the impact comprehensively. The environmental science, ecology, biology, geology, hydrology, economic, social, and health, public health. Why interdisciplinary? Environmental problems are complex. The social, economics effect must be considered alongside ecological impacts, ensure the balance and realistic assessment. What is the environmental impact assessment decision and support tools? EIA is not just a study; it is a tool for supporting the decision making. How it is helps provide the scientific information to authorities, compare the project alternatives, recommended the mitigation measures, involve the public participation, help to decide the whether it is approve or modify the project or reject the project. Outcome of these decision and support tool, environmentally responsible project planning. Environmentally, it is responsible for the project planning, reduce the conflict and legal issues of the project, better and long-term sustainability of the project. These are the useful tool for the environmental impact assessment. Next one is EIA process. What is the process of EIA? The environmental impact assessment is a sequence of used to the evaluating environmental consequence proposed project. It is ensure that political impacts and identify the earlier manage the effectively these impacts to the identify earlier manage to the effectively. What is the screening? What is the purpose of screening? To determine the whether a purpose proposed project is required as a EIA and level of assessment needed. What is the key activities of these projects? Review the screening, review the project type, size, and location. Compare with legal their holes and guidelines. You decide the screening. Screening is decide the This project need the AI required or limited AI required, full the AI required study. What is the outcome of this screening? A decision is necessary. Uh, Discussion is necessary to the death of AI. Major screening is the screening process to screening is the AI major process to determine the whether proposed project required the AI and level of assessment needed. A scoping identify the major environmental and social issues that needed to detailed study. The purpose of scoping is identify the major environmental and social issues. What is the key activities of scoping? Identify the environmental components like water, soil, and biodiversity issues. Consult the experts and stakeholders. Define the study boundaries and time framework. Prepare the terms and refer to the EIA process. It is clearly scoping is clearly focusing on significant impacts and saving the time and resources. What is the impact prediction? This purpose is impact prediction purpose is to forecast the likely environmental and social effect to the project, environmental and social effects of the project. What are the key activities of impact prediction? The key activities of impact prediction is the collect the baseline data of environment, baseline environmental use the models and expert analysis. What is the axis of these impact prediction? Direct and indirect impacts, the short-term and long-term impacts, cumulative impacts of the prediction. What is the mitigation process in the EIA? The purpose of mitigation process is reduce and avoid the components for the negative impacts. The key aspect of this mitigation is modify the product design, introduce the pollution control measures, uh, restore the affect areas, develop the environmental impact assessment plans. What is the major outcome for the mitigation? Reduce the environmental damage and improve sustainability. Next one is AI process. Fifth process is monitoring. What is the purpose of monitoring in AI proposals project? They ensure that mitigation measure the implement and effective. Mitigation measures are implemented and effective. What is the key activities of in this monitoring? Air, noise, pollution measurements, compliance check with the regulations, reporting to the authorities, and correct, they are correct to the action and it is problem rises. What is the outcome of the monitoring? The continuous environmental protection during these after this project and implementation. Monitoring means completely continuous environmental protection during and after the project implementation. This is a EIA process. The next one is economic impacts of assessment. What is the socio-economic impact of the process is? So the socio-economic impact assessment is a part of environmental impact assessment that evaluates how a project depend development activity affect on the people, communities, and local economies. It helps to decision makers understand the social benefits the project reduce the negative impact. Employment effects. The project often the create the are reducing the job opportunities. Positive effects is new jobs are creating the during construction the operation the projects. Skill development and training. They are giving some skill development and training. Increase the local economy in project. They are creating the project. They establish them some income and increase the local community uh, activity. What is the negative side of these project, this employment process? Socio-economic impacts. The loss of traditional jobs of farming, fishing, forestry, like this, that temporarily or seasonal development, inequal economic impacts and environmental impact assessment. Income changes. What is the income change? Development projects can influence the households and community income levels. Uh, what is the positive side of the income changes? The higher waves, higher wages, the new business opportunities, growth of local marketing and servicing, the improve the standards of the living. What is the negative impact of these? One, change the lifestyle, loss of land and natural resources, increase the cost of living, income inequality between the groups. These all are the impact of social and economical issues. What is the environmental monitoring? Environmental monitoring is a continuous and periodic measurements of the environmental conditions, access quality, pollution levels, and ecological health, and it helps to authorities and communities understand the environmental changes and take the corrective actions. Like, for example, air, water, and soil monitoring. Monitoring is carried out across the major components of the environmental air monitoring. Measurements pollutant, for example, air pollutions like particular matters, PM 2.0, PM 10, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide. The conduct using the air quality stations and sensors. Water monitoring, the physical test the physical and chemical biological parameters of the uh, water, pH, dissolved oxygen, for example, pH, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, heavy metals, and microbial contamination. You understand the and soil monitoring. This is soil pollution monitoring. Checks the nutrients levels of level of soil, heavy metal contamination of soil, soil pH, and organic matter. The important for the agriculture and it is all are the important for the agriculture and land management. What is the environment monitoring is in major concern is pollution detection. Environmental monitoring helps to identify the source of levels of pollution functions, detect the pollution hotspots, track the changes over the time, identify the industrial and urban pollution sources, provide the earlier warning to the environmental hazardous places. For example, uh, detection of toxic chemicals in rivers, monitoring the smog levels in cities, identify the contamination soil near the industries. What is the policy support to these monitoring support, environmental monitoring process? Monitoring data supports to environmental policy and decision making. How do it support the policy? How do it support the provide the scientific evidence for the regulations? It helps to set the pollution standards, evaluate the effectiveness of environmental laws. What is the guidelines of the? It is give a guidelines to the urban and industrial planning. What is the create the better to the public health protection, sustainable resource management. These are the environmental monitoring uses and benefits and losses of the process, AI process. Some uh, chemical actions of the environmental issues. What is the chemical accidents? Chemical accidents are the unexpected events involving the they releasing the hazardous chemicals that can be causes the fires, explosions, toxic explosives, or environment. These accidents may be occurs in industries, laboratories, or during the stage of transport and chemicals. Uh, for example, first one is a runway reaction. A runway reaction is occurs when the chemical reaction is accelerates to uncontrollably, often due to the excess of heat pressure. What are the causes of these chemical accidents? increasing the temperature, the failure of fixing of chemicals, unexpected reaction at the factory conditions. What is the consequence of these chemical accidents? Explosions or fires are increase release the toxic gases, damage to the equipment and facilities, injuries the uh, core areas. Design. What is the design and faults of these chemical accidents? Poor engineering, false equipment design can lead to the chemical accident. Example for design faults in the equipment, weak storage tanks, improper pipe system, advocate safe values, lack of backup system. These all are the design faults. What is the impacts of the design faults to the chemical accident? Chemical leaks to the spill, leaks to this air, structural exposures are released. These are the chemical accidents to the hazardous environmental impact assessment chemical accidents. Hazardous assessment methods. What is the hazardous assessment method? Hazardous assessment methods are the systematic technical used to the identify the identify, analyze, and manage risk in the industrial process, especially these involves in the hazardous chemicals. These methods is help to prevent the accidents by detecting the potential failure and their consequences. Failure modes and effective analysis. I will share you something. The failure structure method used to the identify the possible failure methods. It is system and access to their this hazardous assessment method. List all possible failures in components of process. Evaluate the severity of severity occurrence and detection of the each failure. These are the environmental hazardous assessment method. Hazardous and operability study. HAZOP. This is a systematic method to identify the diversion from the normal operating conditions. This conduct the multidisciplinary team using the guide towards such as no more, less, reverse. They are using these type of as well as the exam part of the process purpose detection of potential hazards improve the process to the safety and operability. This what happened? It there is a more pressure on the pipeline than expected. What is the fault tree analysis? Fault tree analysis is the top-down approach to use the analyze the cause of a specific failure in an agent. This is the specific the cause of a specific failure of agent. What is the consequences of his analysis? Consequence of analysis is estimate the potential effect to the agent of the occurs. The model. What is the key features of the consequence of analysis? Models possible to agent scenario, predict the spread to toxic gases, fires, explosions, access to the impacts on people and property and environment. What is the purpose of these? The plan to emergency response, design the safety distance, reduce the potential damage. These all are the environmental assessment methods. The next one is environmental audit is a systematic document and the objective evaluation and the organization operation to the ensure the environmental laws permit to the internal policies of focusing on environmental reduction, waste reduction, and the pollution control to improvement. The key elements of the checking compliance and identify the improvements of these areas, including the waste reduction and management. Reduction and management, source of segregation. What is the waste reduction and management process? Source of segregation. Verify that waste is spread to the at the point of the generation into the categories such as organic, recyclable, non-recyclable, and hazardous. This is a source of segregation. Waste auditing and classification. Identify the quantify all waste stream to the understand the generation patterns of the ensuring hazardous waste is properly. Like that, hazardous waste is stored in secured design areas with the proper labeling, secondary contaminant, that the storage times not exceed the regulatory minimum. Reduction of incentives. The evaluate the implementation, the waste reduction plans such as minimizing the package, reusing the materials, and adapting the just time to time production. It is all the reduced inventory waste. A disposal of authorization. What disposal authorization? The ensure that the waste disposal, particularly hazardous waste, it is handled to by the authorized vendors with proper manifest and record it. They are maintain the record, maintain the observe the last 3 years, maintain records. Pollution control improvement. What is the pollution control control implement? Air emissions. Verify the air pollution bursts, filters, electrostatic respirators. It is operational maintain and collaborate the environmental equipment. Effluent treatment. They check the effluent treatment. The check the effluent treatment plants or sewage treatment plants are functioning correctly, and that treated the water meets and state pollution control by discharge of norms. The continuous monitoring. What is the continuous monitoring process? Review the data from the continuous emission monitoring system, CEMS, and verify the stock highest meet prescribed norms. This spill prevention, ensure that spill kits are available for near the chemical storages. They are that secondary contaminant is a place of prevent the soil and water contamination. Noise control method. The monitoring the equipment noise levels, ensuring that they do not extend to the legal limits, the industrial surrounding zones. These are all the environmental impact, waste reduction management. The key objectives of audit is the achievement of the compliance with the legal standards, reducing the environmental impact by the maximizing reduce the reuse and recycling, identify the cost saving and opportunity through the reduce raw material consumption. What is the these all the environmental auditing process. Economic analysis approach. Economic analysis approach for the resource management are designed to the evaluate the effectively and sustainability of using the natural resources and environmental resources, often by looking the behind traditional phases, traditional financial statement to include social and environmental impacts. These approaches help to guide the policies decision, particularly when dealing with the scarce resources of public sector and investment. What is the key approaches of the economical analysis context, including the resource auditing purpose, what is the physical accounting method, monetary evaluation, integration. These key techniques of the using the uh, environmental economic. What is the valuing of natural resources? Valuing of natural resources means it evaluating the economic and social ecological worth resources such as forest, water, soil, wildlife, and minerals. Uh, a market-based and non-market-based valuation of methods, and this is the various make the the last one is what is the final thought of EIA is the EIA. EIA is the essential for the suitable for development because of integrates environmental and social economical content into the project planning. It has helped to ensure that process does not come the cost of environmental degradation, social justice. Environment impact assessment is a vital planning and decision making tool that helps to balance the need of economical development with the protection of environment. By the identifying potential and environmental social impact for the projects began, EIA allows to planners to avoid and reduce the management sequence. What is the key? Contributes to the development of environment, prevent the irreversible damage, improves the decision making, encouraging the public participation, support to the long-term sustainability. These all are the role of environmental impact assessment, sustainable development. Thank you very much.